What is up, everybody? My name is Jamie. Welcome back to We're on the Same Page. Today we are going to go over everything that I got from the library in the month of August. So let's get into it. Again, I'm going to go through graphic novels, and then audiobooks, and I'm going to leave the timestamps for all of those in the doobly-doo below, so if you're interested in one and not in the other, you can just skip through to whatever you're interested in. So, graphic novels this month, I didn't have as many as I did last month, and that's because I just binge read all of the Lumberjanes graphic novels last month, and so I only had 2 left to read. I had Lumberjanes Volume 5 and also Lumberjanes and Gotham Academy. And I do have to say that it was such a disappointment this month. I was really looking forward to the next installment of the Lumberjanes saga, and Volume 5 just did not sell me. I don't know if it was a different art style or if it was the story, but it was just... For anyone who has read the last volume of the Lumberjanes comics, let me know what you think of it down in the description below. I know that some people like it and some people are just not a fan of it, and I think I fall into the latter category, which was really disappointing. And so I wanted to go and see what the next Lumberjanes volume would be about, and that was actually not just exclusively Lumberjanes. It was Lumberjanes and Gotham Academy, and it was written by China Flores. As some of you may remember, I read a volume of Gotham Academy in June, and I wrapped it up in my graphic novels wrap-up, so I will leave that video linked in the description below if you want to check it out. But I said in that video that I wanted to check out more comics that centered on Gotham Academy students, and so I went and got this volume hoping that it would be a combination of 2 worlds that I was very interested in, and it just let me down. I didn't even finish it, and that's really disheartening because at the beginning of July and in June, I was just reading so many Lumberjanes graphic novels, and I loved all of them at the very beginning, and this one just didn't live up, and it was really disappointing. The storyline wasn't something that hooked me. It was all about time travel, and it took place in the 80s. The art wasn't something that I was interested in, even though it was pretty. It just wasn't the art style that captured me in the Lumberjanes graphic novels, and there were so many characters, and again, I didn't even finish it. I DNF'd it and returned it to the library. So now onto the novels. I cannot get through this title to save my life, so we're gonna try to. But the first novel that I read in August was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. So I actually started reading this book and I got about 50 pages or 75 pages into it. It was a thicker, more intense sci-fi plot, so it was just really heavy, and I thought that was something that I wanted after reading a bunch of contemporaries, but then I got into it and it was just not exactly what I was wanting to read at the moment, but I'm really excited to get back to it. I didn't DNF it because I didn't like it. It just wasn't something that I was in the mood for at the moment, so I think I'm going to go back and get it later on when I'm really in a sci-fi and fantasy mood, because the writing was awesome and the story was intriguing and all of the characters were unique and totally kick butt, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I thought I was, so I picked it up from the library, but I'm definitely going to read it later. In the same vein, I picked up Sleeping Giants by Sylvia Newell, and I have seen this all over YouTube. I don't even know if I'm saying the name right because I've heard it pronounced so many different times, and I got the US version of the cover, and that is gorgeous, but I just saw Little Book Owl haul both the first and second book in this series, and those covers are so pretty. I want them. They're just all of these pixelated constellations that come to form the robot's face, and it's just so pretty. And I was really interested in reading this book, and then it just sat on my desk for 3 weeks, and I ended up returning it to the library just because I had renewed it 3 times and I knew that I wasn't going to get around to it because I was just in a contemporary phase. I don't think it would have taken me that long to read, but I just wasn't gravitating towards it. So even though I'm really interested in reading it, and I'll definitely pick it back up later on, I just think that it wasn't the right time. Then I picked up a bunch of different things. The first book that I picked up is The Definition of Indefinable Things by Whitney Taylor. Now, I don't really know that much about this book. I saw Emma from Emma Books, and she said that it was one of the best representations of anxiety or depression. I can't remember which one, but it has a main character that has a mental illness, and she said that it represented that mental illness really well, and so I was interested in picking it up. The next book that I picked up was Midnight at the Electric by Jodi Lynn Anderson. I saw this book in one of the Epic Reads wrap-ups, and I was really interested in it. It pulls together 3 different women from different generations, but in the same family line, and it has to do with the Dust Bowl and electricity, and it's different people from 1919, 1934, and then 2065. So it has to do with our past and the future, and I am really excited to get to it. It's super short, and I've heard great things about it, so I picked it up. The next book that I picked up is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia, and I cannot express to you how much I am loving this book. I am at 343 pages. I read Fangirl a while ago, and I liked it. It just wasn't really, like, my favorite book at the time, but for those who read that book and are interested in reading what I consider a much better book, read this book. It's so good, and I just have so many feelings about it, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to express them all enough to be able to do a review. But it was one of those books, and I put it on Twitter, where I had read the first 15 pages of it and just fallen madly in love. I could just tell that it was one of those books that I was going to absolutely love, and I need to get a physical copy of it because I love it that much. Like, I haven't even finished it, and I know that this is one of my new favorite books, if not my new favorite book. Like, it is up there with Challenger Deep and My Lady Jane. Like, I have just loved this book, and I couldn't wait to get to it, and surprisingly, I thought that it would have a massive line, like a massive waitlist line at the library, because everyone on BookTube has been talking about it, and it is rightly justified, but I thought that so many people would be interested in it because similar books that have gotten so much hype, like The Hate U Give, have super long waitlist lines, but for some reason in my library area, like, nobody was reading this book. I got it 2 days after I requested it, and I binge read the first 50 pages in one night, and then I had a test the next day because I'm in college now, and I was so mad because I couldn't continue to read it, and I wanted to just read it all the time. I just wanted to read it straight through, and I couldn't do that because gosh dang college got in the way. But this book, like, I could just go on and on about how much I love this book. I even have arcs that I should be reading at the moment because they're coming out soon, and I don't want to do anything but read this book. Good, and I haven't told you anything about it. It is all about this girl named Eliza who writes this incredibly popular comic that has to do, it's like sci-fi, and it's also fantasy, and it has a love story in it, and it's just super interesting. And she has been writing it under an alias called Lady Constellation for years, and she's found 2 really close friends through it, but it's super popular. It's making her enough money that she can go to college, and she's just pushing through the last couple of months of her high school senior year to be able to get out and to be able to focus on this more. And then, through a series of coincidences, she realizes that one of the people who writes fan fiction for her comic and is one of the most popular fan fiction writers for her comic actually is now going to her school. The book also deals with a main character who has anxiety, and I cannot highly recommend this book enough. Again, I've been blabbering about it, and I could go on and on about how much I love it for ages and ages. It is so good, and I'm so glad I picked it up this month from the library, but I am definitely going to pick up a physical copy of it for my own because it's just so good. It's just so good. The next book that I picked up from the library in August is Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. I have yet to read this, but I just want to sit down and binge read it, and I've heard so many good things about it. After reading We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, I was really in the mood for a small book that packed a powerful punch, and I haven't read a novella since I read one of the Twilight novellas, like, ages ago. This one is massive on BookTube, and it was just sitting on the shelf at my library. Nobody was picking it up, and I got it super quick. So glad that, like, the people in my area are just not reading the things that I want to read, because that means that I get them quicker. The last book that I picked up from the library in physical copy was Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Madsen. I picked up a Morgan Madsen book in June, and I didn't end up getting to it. It was really thick, and I wanted to get to it in the Booktubeathon, and I just ended up reading other things. This one I've heard many good things about, and I want it to be my last summery contemporary that I read. So this is probably what I'm going to get to after Eliza and Her Monsters, if I don't just binge read Every Heart a Doorway. This month, just like last month, I picked up a lot of audiobooks from the library. The first audiobook that I read this month was Food, a Love Story by Jim Gaffigan, and it was hysterical. I laughed out loud so much. The next book that I read on audiobook was also from Jim Gaffigan, and it was Dad is Fat. The audiobook for this one was actually on Overdrive because they don't have the audiobook for Food, a Love Story, but they did for this one. And I don't know if I would have related more to this one if I was like a parent, because he's a parent and he has a lot of kids. So a lot of the story is about him becoming a parent, him getting married, him having kids. It's really funny and it's super relatable, and I enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars, but it wasn't as enjoyable as Food, a Love Story, which I gave 5 stars. The next audiobook that I got from the library was A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, but I got the audiobook for this book, and it was just so, the narrator was just so monotone, and really audiobooks are hit or miss. I am going to read this book, and I'm going to read it in physical copy, but I was really looking forward to listening to it in audiobook copy. The next book that I am listening to on audiobook currently, and I'm almost finished with, is Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. And I've heard a lot of people talking about this. I looked up the premise, and it's all about this sister who's coming home from a boarding school, and she's coming home during the summer to take care of her brother who has bipolar disorder, and she has a long history with them. They're really close. There's a really nice sibling relationship in this, and they end up falling in love with the same person. I don't really know how I'm gonna rate it. I don't know. I'll keep you updated on that one, but I'm currently listening to it and I'm enjoying it, but I just don't know how I'm going to rate it, which is strange. That's the last audiobook that I listened to that I took out of the library this month. So that is everything. That is everything that I have taken out from the library this month and what I have read from the library this month. I'd also love to hear what you're thinking about these books, if you're currently reading them, or if you've read them, or if you have any recommendations of cool things that you read this month. I have been Jamie. I'm so glad that you are on the same page with me today, and I will talk to you later. Bye!